Yesterday was our first introduction to React. What's everyone's first impression of it? It's because it's kind of a big shift. If you just think of, so yesterday we introduced functional components and class components, and there might be some like confusion, like this is an entire new kind of like framework of how things work. But if you just think of a class component just like a class in Python, you have to reference like this or the self keyword, and functional components will always return something when you write a function or a method. It always has to return something, and it's always going to have to return what JSX for React. So the first two challenges were, what was it, like the chalkboard one? We had to write down detention, and then the calendar, and then the state abbreviator. So today we're just going to review state abbreviator, and then we're going to go into another challenge. So for this specific challenge, it looks like we have to create like a drop-down menu that contains a list of all U.S. states. So like Alaska, you click a drop-down, a list of U.S. states show up, and then you select that list. It looks like it's supposed to render a component that displays the abbreviation of the selected U.S. state once you actually select it. So let's gonna clone this. Git clone ls cd. I'm cding in the state abbreviator challenge. And then I'm going to code. We should open up this, like the current window. All right, why didn't I do that? Here we go. State abbreviator. It looks like we have a folder that has an index.js. And it's just a gigantic array it's an array of dictionaries that has two keywords, name and alpha2. The name is the name of the state. The alpha2 is the abbreviation of it. All right. So first things first, we need to create a React app. What's the command, Marcos, to create a new React app? npx create app. Let's just call it app for right now. State. Yeah, let's call it. I don't know. Let's just call it my app for simplest. All right. Now, you know this takes like a little while. It's going kind of fast. Yeah.
It's going to take 76.8 seconds.
Yeah, question for you.
Yes.
So, can you speak on the necessity to use state functional app? Is it necessary to always use state?
State is only used in components to keep track of information when the screen renders. So when the DOM renders. So you don't need state unless you want specific data to show up on the screen.
And are there other ways? There are other ways to decide. There are ways to direct it.
Right, but if you want to keep track of something throughout like a session, but yeah, you don't want to just keep track of state. You don't want to actually manipulate the DOM, like get element by ID, and then insert inner HTML, and then change it that way. Because that's just vanilla JavaScript at that point. All right, happy hacking. So my app showed up in here. It's got node modules, public, which we really don't touch. We have our source. This is like the core contents of our app. We have this app.js. Now we have our state data. Now let's run our Let's CD into my app and clear it. Let's start my app. How do I start up the app? npm
Start.
start. Where does that come from? That script. This is just a script. So in our package.json file, we have this thing called scripts. And this is what it's running. You're running npm start, and it's running this specific script. React scripts start. And React scripts is just a library. Don't necessarily know what it does. I guess it just starts the server and runs. So start. There we go. There's our app. So the goal is to like create a drop-down menu in here with all the states that show up. Let's go to that. I'm going to get rid of all this because we don't really need this. I'm just going to do an h1 tag called select state. Saved it. Automatically restarted the server. Here it goes. Now, if I want my app to have access to the state data, what do I have to do? So correct. I have to put the state data in the source folder because anything that when the app runs, it only loads stuff within the source. It only compiles stuff within the source folder. So I've got the state data within the source folder. Now what? So I heard I have to import it. Okay. Import state data from, and it's just the path to the state data. Okay. Now, let's see if this worked. So this is a functional component. In functional components, you can console log anything in here. Don't ever do it like outside of here or like randomly outside of the app here. If you want to console log stuff or print stuff in the console, do it within the function, between the function and the return statement. I'm just going to console log state data, state data. And I'm going to actually do state data. This camel case. Sweet. Nothing blew up. So I'm going to open up the dev tools, Command Option I. There we go. Our state data just loaded. So does anybody know why I didn't have to do index.js? I only had to go directly into the folder. Yeah. So if you just reference the folder, it will default to any file called index.js. So it will just automatically look in that folder, and if there's a file that's called index, that's the first one we're going to load. But we can do index.js just to.
If the file weren't called index, we have to define path.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
File.
If there's, yeah. Do I want to try it?
Sorry.
No, I don't want to try it right now.
It's a rabbit.
So we have our select state. We have our states that look, here we go. It's an array of dictionaries and an array of objects. Yeah, right here. Now, part of the requirements, I need to do a select drop down. Don't necessarily know what that is. Drop down menu HTML. But the select drop down. Looks like, I don't know what that looks like. Maybe it is what we want. Okay. So yeah, I guess this will work. So I'm just gonna copy and paste this. right in here for the time being. I just want to see what shows up. Okay, Volvo, Mercedes. That looks right.
Just select it. Fix that.
This formatting.
Yeah, right. Do it.
Oh yeah, so I just did right click format. I don't know if that automatically shows up. That might be part of a package of VS Code.
Beautiful.
Is it part of Beautify? I think so.
Format then uses Beautify to do it. If you have multiple, libraries in the top left.
It says pick which one you want.
Which one you want to use to format.
So looks like we need this option. So I'm just gonna comment that. I don't need all of that. I just need one right now. What's,
Question.
yes.
Why does React seem to center everything by default?
Why, what do you mean it centers everything?
Like, go back to the page.
I think it's.
Oh, that's just,
It's always
That's
in
in the
the center.
CSS.
that's in the CSS in this class app.
If you go app.css.
It was pre-written. Okay, I got it now.
So let's just delete that. There we go. All right. So we kind of have the JSX we kind of need right now. But now let's do, so when I select the state, let's do another. Like when it changes, when I select something, I want like something to change. So on select, I'm going to create an on change handler. Is that right? On change. There's nothing there. I'm just going to console log something. I'm going to invoke. Cool. So when I select something and it changes, this on change event handler is going to execute. It's going to invoke this function. It's just a fat arrow function, and it's going to call console log here. Refresh. We have the state data. I don't really need that anymore, because I know it's being loaded. State late. It's fine. Cool. So every time I change it, it looks like it's invoking this function. So I need to create a handle change. Handle let's do a let handle change. And then I want to do eat up console log change. Logo. So I created a handle change function that when I select something and it changes, it's going to invoke this handle change, and hopefully it console logs this change. So I'm going to refresh. There we go, it changed. So we have this handle change right now, but let's render all the state data down. So how do I do that? I gotta loop through the array and then like render. How do we do it before? Do we? Okay. So let's do let get state data. Then what do I have to do? The loop.
Make a list.
Make a list.
Or
An array to
store each element.
So I'm going to create a list called all states that's going to store all the elements that we want to render. So I need to loop through. Let I equals 0, I is less than the state data.length, I plus plus.
The other option is JavaScript actually now lets you, your newer version of it, which currently will let you do for let state of states, and it will loop through each.
Oh,
So state of states would loop through, state in states would loop through by key, if it was a key value pair, but state of states loops through by item, by the values.
interesting. I've not explored that yet, but I'll look that up.
That's it, since early 20, or since mid 2018.
Awesome. So we have this get state data. I'm just going to console log. What is it? State data at I. Get state data. What is it throwing an error for? Oh, thank you. And instead of here, I'm actually, hold on. I'm just going to use this as a reference. And in here, interpolate, call my get state data function. See what happens.
If you're interpolating it, you don't need to call it parentheses. If it's inside this, at that point here, you can do ASX.
I'm sorry?
I don't think you need the parentheses to call it.
Right here,
Yeah.
not valid reg. This may happen to return instead of render.
So you're not returning anything from get state data, so you also need a slash after get state data to say that you're actually executing.
Hold on a second. It was working before. There we go. So, so right down here, I'm invoking this get state data function. I'm invoking it. It's coming up here to this get state data. We're creating a list. We're not using the list yet, but it's looping through the state data, which is an array of dictionaries. And right now I'm just console logging at each index of the state data array. And this is what's displaying. So if I want to just get the name, and what is it, the alpha 2? Alpha dash 2. There we go. Getting the Alabama, but we still have to render it down there. So what's next, Daniel? So I'm looping through the state data. I'm getting the name and alpha. And I need to assign it to this list.
You need to push
Dot push.
data
Yep.
into the list.
So yep, I need to push the state data into this list. But I'm going to actually push the entire element in there. So let's look at right here. And then eventually I'm going to have to return the all state. So right now it's just 51 Volvos. But in here, I want to pass in the value of the state name. So I need to interpolate that, like so. And then also the value. I don't necessarily want the value to be the actual name of it. I want it to be the abbreviation. Because, you'll see. Because we actually want, because we want to render the value.
So you can render the value in HTML.
Because when we, go ahead. Oh. So when we do this on change, when we enter here, we're gonna have to grab the event, and we're gonna have to grab the value of the event. So.
Okay. Okay.
So we have this value attribute within the option,
Yes.
because this can be anything. We can call it literally whatever.
Perfect. I get it.
So let's go through. It's calling this get state data function. It's invoking it. It's coming up here. It's get state data. We're making a list of all the states, which is an array. We're looping through the state data, which is an array. I'm going to delete this. And then we're going to push the option element with the value attribute, and that value attribute is going to be the alphanumeric, or the alpha, the 2-letter abbreviation of the state data. But what's going to actually display is the name, and we're doing it through this interpolation. So right there, and we got a warning: each child in a list should have a unique key. So create a key equals I. Oh, that's an array. Brackets I. There we go. District change. So every time I change it, but right now I want the actual abbreviations to show up instead of just this change. So in here, this on change, when I actually select a state, this on change handler gets fired. So handle change function gets executed, and it needs to take in an event. And let's console log this event dot target dot value. I saved it. Coming up here, I'm just going to refresh. Let's click Iowa. There, the Iowa shows up.
How about Kansas?
Where's Kansas?
Concept.
Kanza.
Oh
Gotta
no.
love that Kanza. So now let's look at. All right, now we have to create a component that displays the abbreviation once you select state. So in here, let's assign, in this handle change, let's assign the abbreviation to state, not like the actual like state. Assign it to state, the state of the component.
Oh, gotcha. So you're gonna use a hook
So we're gonna use a hook.
and use state.
What is it? Use state. And then down here, what is it? Let,
Brackets.
what do we call it? State, state abbreviation. Then is it set state abbreviation equals, is it use state or set?
Yeah, use state.
Use state. And then we want to pass in the default value of state. We want to pass in the initial value of state, which nothing is selected once the page loads. So let's just assign it to an empty string. So I'm going to delete this. And I'm going to I'm just going to console log right here, the initial state. Or state. What's our state? State abbreviation. Set state. All right, that's fine. I'm going to refresh. So it looks like it's assigned to an empty string, so nothing's actually showing up. Now, how do I change the state of state abbreviation?
You're gonna use set state.
Set state?
Yeah, set state.
Set state abbreviation. So I'm calling this function.
Yep.
So the use state, remember, returns 2 items. The actual state and then a method that enables us to change the state of that. So that's what this is. The set state takes in event.target.value. Let's actually assign this event to a variable called let selected state equals event.target.value. I'm going to console log. I don't need to, we already kind of did that. And then we're going to set the state to the selected state. But this is a method, so let's actually return the set state function. So handle change is invoked every time I actually select a state from my dropdown. It takes in the event. The event.target.value is within this option. So every time it's rendered, this option, value, that's the actual value of this event.target value. It's the state, the alpha 2. And then we're returning the set state abbreviation method that will change, and we're passing in the new selected state. And this state abbreviation is that new 2 letters, the 2-letter abbreviation. So let's run this. So every time it renders, every time there's the change of state, the component re-renders. You don't actually see it re-render, but see on the it's invoking that console log down here. So looks like we're getting the information we need. PA. Now we just need it to render on the screen. Any questions up to this point? Anything you want me to?
Is there a reason why we're using state versus it's handling the event to handle change?
So the question is there, why are we using state versus just returning, or returning and handle change to make it show up on the screen?
Yeah.
So, like, I'm asking you, like, how would we make it show up on the screen if we weren't using state at that point?
Well, you're able to capture the event.
Okay.
And the string is in the event.target.value.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay, and then so that is what you want to represent on the screen when you select from the drop-down menu. So why can't handle change just take the event.target.value and represent it in the HTML component underneath, render it in the HTML component underneath?
It might be able to, but I actually don't know if it can, but I don't know if that's best practice.
Oh, okay.
But I've never done that before. But so the reason why I went up handle change is because down here, let's do ternary. So we're going to input JavaScript here, like console log here again. And then it says here again. So that's actually like running. So in here, we're going to look at our state. What is it? State abbreviation. And we're going to test something. Let's test the length of it, because right now it's greater than 0. Because right now in the initial, the length is 0, right when the page loads. We can test that by console log state abbreviation. Length. So it's 0 right now. So when the state abbreviation length is greater than 0, that means there's an abbreviation in the state. And do and P equals state abbreviation. So it means when this is true and this is true, which is always going to be true, it's going to render something. There we go. This is a new syntax, but in order, if we want to do like another way, we can do if state greater than 0, render that, or null, like don't render anything. It's the same thing.
That's a new syntax, you said?
It was introduced in React like a year ago. So I don't want to say it's new, but it's probably new to you.
Sure.
But
So as long as all the conditions
of that are met.
of that are met, it'll render something.
Yeah.
But it has to be in JSX. Right, that's how that syntax you use in raw JavaScript.
Yeah, I don't think so. I actually don't know.
So is
I've
that is it like a comparison operator?
Yeah, essentially, it doesn't compare. It just makes if this is true, then render this.
Then render it. Okay,
Yeah.
I got you.
But this also has to be true. But currently, it's just this returns as like a true value, truthy value.
So if you ask it to render something that's false, it's not
Right. So like right now, if when I refresh this, it's not rendering. So this condition is not met.
Yeah.
And so it's like both these statements have to be true for this to render.
and then it'll render the second.
And that's specific to React.
That's specific.
Yeah.
to React. Can you get it to render multiple things at the end of the double ampersand? Like if you had another,
Like something here.
yeah, or so yeah, so or it would all have to be in. Okay, I got you. And send it.
So there it is.
Nice.
But now it says, is that the requirements? It says render a component that displays the abbreviation of the selected states once you select a state from the dropdown.
You did that.
So this is the one component. Let's create another component called new folder, components, new folder. I'm actually going to not create a new folder. I'm just going to create a file called state.js. You guys have, so in your extensions, this is kind of off topic. So I'm going to show you something real quick. So if I do RCC, this menu comes up. It gives me a bunch of options. Create a React class component, module system, code snippet. If I go down, we have create a class component. If I just do RC, create a class component. I just want a dumb component right here, like this. So RSC, create a stateless React component without prop types and ES6 module. If I just click enter, it already fills everything in. It's called a code snippet. So you don't have to, so RC, I can do like that. It automatically fills in everything.
That's cool.
And that is, if you go to extensions, is it React? I don't know, simple. I don't remember what it was, but recommended, enabled. Oh, here it goes. React JS code snippets. I think that's what it is. So RC. There. And it automatically creates the name of the component as the name of your file.
That's cool.
So here, I'm just gonna say like each one here. So export default, but I want to import it into my JS or app.js file. So import the state from components \state JS. State is defined but never used. And instead of rendering the abbreviation down here, I want to render it within here.
Okay.
So let's just call, how do I use a component within a component? So what if I just did state ran. Oh, right here, that's my here.
Cool.
So this is what's called a child component,
Okay.
because so the state component is a child component of my app component. And the app component is the state's parent component. So the app component is the state component's parent. But now I need to pass in this abbreviation, the state of the app component. I need to pass that value into the state component. I need to pass it down to its child. I need to pass the parent's state down to the child component. How do I do that? Does anybody know? No. This is where we get into props. So state is used essentially just to keep track of information in that component. But if you want to pass state and use it in another component, you have to pass it via props. And props just stands for properties. So whereas state is mutable, you can change state and everything, props you can't change. So in order to do that, I just like literally pass it in here. So I'm gonna pass in, and I can call this anything, like pass down state equals, I think it's do a ternary, then I'm gonna pass it in the state abbreviation. So I'm going to delete this part for now because we don't need that anymore. Let's see what happens. So everything's loading, but I want to console log instead of console logging state. I'm going to console log props, and props is always just called props. Props is not defined. That's interesting. So it's not defined because I haven't actually passed it in to the function. What if I do props? So I need to pass in props into the actual state function component, and then I'll have access to all the props that are being passed down.
That's everything that's after the.
So let's see. This is props. So pass down state. So when the app first renders, it sets the state to an empty string. It comes down here, and it passes the empty string to pass down state into this props. And now I'm just console logging props. So that's what's being displayed right here. I'm gonna get rid of that. So props, so this is from the child component. I'm actually say from the child, or from the parent. Well, yeah. I'm just gonna console log just to show you that this is the child component. Child component, props, here it is, it's empty right now. Now if I change it, the props renders, pass down props equals DC. It's great. Now in here, I can use props. If I just do props, whoop, dot, what is it called? Oh, that. So delete that for right now.
Pass down state.
Yep. What's going on? There's a closing tag.
On each one.
You didn't need that.
Oh, thank you. So pass down props. So props equals is a dictionary with this pass down props keyword. So I can render props dot pass down props. Now if I change it, what's going to happen? There we go. So every time I run it, that component re-renders. The state component
Is
re-renders.
this the drop down menu starts in Alabama? Can you make the default string? Because when you first load the page, it doesn't have a string, but the drop down says no.
And you can assign the default.
When you create the state, you
So when I actually create the state here, I'll just say AL. What questions do you have?
This is awesome.
So props is essentially just the parent's state being passed down. And you can't change props. Or you're not supposed to like rechange props. There's no like, I want to change props or assign props to state. Nothing like that.
You can change state.
We'll change state because
That's the only
what
way.
we're doing, we are changing state up here, and it's
Right.
automatically being passed down to props.
The props is an immutable box that will carry whatever.
Yeah.
Tells it to.
Yep. So it's just like, think of props as like you're a parent, like an actual parent, and you have children, and children just kind of do what they're told. They don't necessarily know why. They're just like, all right, I'll just do this because my dad or my mom told me to. They don't like, I got to go to school, I guess, because I'm supposed to. They don't know necessarily why, but the parent has like the single source of truth. Like you know what they're supposed to be doing because you've done it before and you have all the information.
What kind of kids are you raising, Tom?
I haven't raised kids yet. So none that I know of.
We got shot callers.
But anyway. Any questions?
Can you go back to App.js?
Yep. So let's review one more time. So we're rendering the select dropdown. That's rendering, that's calling this get state data function. And here it's looping through all the state data, which is an array of dictionaries. It's looping through, and then we're pushing this option element. We're giving it a key of like the I variable, and we're giving it the value of the state data of the alpha, essentially the alpha, the 2-letter abbreviation, and then we're actually displaying the name of the state. We're pushing that into this all state array and returning this array. And that's what's actually being rendered down here 50 times. And then when I select a state, like that, it runs this onChange handler. It's invoking this function, this handle change function, which takes in the event. It assigns the value of the event, which is this value, the state data, which is the alpha, the 2-letter abbreviation. It's assigning it to the selected state variable. Now it's changing the state abbreviation to the 2-letter abbreviation. And then it's passing it down to this child component called state via props. So we have this prop called pass it down state, and it equals the state abbreviation. And then in here, it takes in the props as an argument and it returns some JSX with props and the props down state value.
It's just taking in props. How does it know it's getting that from the parent?
Because in here, in the parent is rendering, or it's returning this component
Okay, so the
within
parent's,
it.
parent's calling for it and it's
Yep.
passing it that in its call, so that's how it gets it.
Correct.
But you need to specify which prop it's looking at based off of that variable right there.
Yep. So I can actually declare two. And I could pass in another property called another var equals another var. And then here, props will have access to that. So I'm just going to console log props again and display the props.
Okay. So that would go with it.
Then you can get into destructuring and stuff like that. So if I really want to, I'm not going to go there. But, any questions?
Did you record this?
Yes.
I know it's coming
I'll
like
upload it.
that. As soon as you got so far.